So you do need today your calculator, your TI Inspire calculator. No? Okay, so yesterday we did expected value. We looked at what discrete is and what continuous is, what a discrete random variable is. So your goal today is to find variance and standard deviation. Do you remember standard deviation from last year? Does anyone remember the big formula? So we had two standard deviations. We have S, which is the sample, and sigma omega. I think that's omega. Sigma. That's lowercase sigma and that's uppercase sigma. So lowercase sigma is equal to, so you have every x value minusing what's x bar. Does anyone remember?
Average.
The average or the mean. And you square that. So you're taking every possible outcome, minusing the mean, squaring those. And you add them all together and divide by what?
The mean.
Not the mean, good try. The number. So in total population, which is sigma, you divide by n. In sample, you divide by n minus 1. Sample is like, I'm going to interview these three. Total or sigma is I interviewed the whole class. Okay, so in the top formula, I would divide by 3 minus 1 in the, because there's 3 in the front row. In the bottom formula, I would divide by, there's 19 of you, I think, so n equals 19. Anyway, that's year 10. You're not expected to use that formula. Does anyone remember what standard deviation actually is? How spread out the data is? So if you have a standard deviation of 50 versus a standard deviation of 2, which one's more spread out? 50. So it's showing you from the mean, it's very spread out. Okay? So you could have just like a graph like this. Is it really spread out? So it's probably this standard deviation. And then we could change the data so it becomes this. So see how it's really spread out from the mean? This is like a terrible histogram, by the way. So this is probably this standard deviation because it's really spread out from the mean. So it's a measure of spread. Variance. Variance is just a standard deviation. What's the little 2 mean? Squared. So variance is just the standard deviation squared. No questions? Let's do an example. So anyone heard of a four-sided die before? Anyone played board games? Maybe you've seen a four-sided die before?
That's scary.
So what's the possible outcomes of a four-sided die? 1, 2, 3, or 4. So we could roll one of those 4 numbers. Okay?
Just lands on the corner.
So they're sometimes used in games like, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. And what's in the distribution table? The top row is probable outcomes, which is not 1, the sum of 2 four-sided die. It's impossible to roll a 1. 2. Can we roll a 3? 4, 5, 6, 7.
Deep brain.
Good to see I can type numbers. So you should be drawing this in your book. The bottom row for a distribution table. The probability of each outcome. Okay, so that's all the possible outcomes for 2 die. 2 4-sided die. So that's sample space. Any questions about that? So what's the probability of rolling 1 plus 1? It is 1 out of 16. What about a total of 3? How many is it? 2 out of 16 or 1/8? What about 4 total? Someone up the back. Can you see a pattern? Okay, so that's the probability of the different totals on 2 4-sided die. Okay, that's the probability distribution. Any questions? So I've done the distribution. The expected value. So I'm just going to refresh your memory on the expected value formula, but I'm also going to show you how to do it on your TI Inspire calculator. So if you have that, power it up now and go to lists. So while I'm waiting for your calculator to power up and you're going to lists, what's the expected value formula? Someone. Fresher from yesterday. Every probability times every x. Yep. Every probability times its corresponding x value. And you add them all together. So we have to put the thing out the front. What's the thing out the front of that? Capital sigma, or the sum of every p. So you do I equals 1, I equals 2, etc. Okay, so it'll look something like this. 2 times 1 over 16 plus someone 3 times 2 over 16 plus 4 times 3 over 16, all the way to 8 times someone up the back, 8 and its corresponding probability. Oh, anyone want to guess what it's going to be?
1.
What's the expected value? 5, because that's the most common. So your expected value when you roll 2 die, combination of those 2 die is 5. On your calculator, I will show you how to do this. So you guys got lists open. In lists, you need to type in all the x values and all the probability. Menu, statistics, stat calcs, one variable. You press OK for one list. It wants our x values. Where are the x values in? Column X, or the column labeled X. Did you guys all label the column X at the top?
Yes.
Yep, hopefully. Where's the frequency list? P. Okay, and we're going to put the result column, or you can pick where you want to put it. I'm going to put it in D. Okay, so you press enter. X bar is expected value, the mean. So it's given you that 5. Standard deviation is 1.5811, etc. TI Inspire. Standard deviation is 1.5811. How do we find the variance from that? Does anyone remember? Perfect. Variance, how much it varies, is the standard deviation squared, which is exactly 2.5. Okay? And that's it. The variance formula. So if it asks you to use the variance formula, this is what it looks like again. I'll show you. The expected value with x squared minus the expected value squared. What was the expected value? 5, so we're doing 5 squared. If you forgot what I said yesterday at the end of the lesson, maybe pay attention now. So what do we do if it's e with something happening to x inside the bracket? Do you remember? That thing happens to every x in the formula. Yeah? So in that formula I just did here, each of these numbers you're going to square. Okay, so it's like 2 squared times 1 over 16 plus 3 squared times 2 over 16. So I'm squaring all the x's. Does that make sense? So you get 27.5. So the variance is 2.5. Okay? So that's another way of finding the variance. And if we have the variance, if a question said, here's the variance, what's the standard deviation? What would you do? Square root. Very good. So if it says the variance is 2.5, the standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say now, unless you have a question. No question?